Okay, good morning. So sorry for the delay, there was a technical error. So coming back to your topic, I think last class we had discussed about JS Mill, right? So we had discussed about why Mill is considered as what? Reluctant Democrat. Now the last part of the Mill, what we have to look into is that Mill's view on women voting rights. Okay. So we can, as I told, we can also consider Mill as what? One of the pioneers in demanding that women representation in parliament. So as I told, we can link this issue to your part B of your syllabus also. That is what you have a topic called as parliament. Okay. So one thing you need to understand with especially mains portion GS2 and political science GS2. Okay, sorry, political science paper 1 part B. So coming back to your topic, I think last class we had discussed about JS Mill, right? So we had discussed about. So there are two things that you have to remember. For most of the questions in polity, whether it is mains or whether it is political science, it is going to be different from the nature of question how they are going to ask in your prelims and mains. So in prelims polity, if you generally see, it is more of knowing bit of what is there in Lakshmikant. Okay, it is knowing more about information. Okay, sir, what do you mean by information? Let us take parliament. You have Lok Sabha, you have Rajya Sabha, president, all three comprise of the parliament, and going to a basic level of understanding that okay, why Lok Sabha, why Rajya Sabha, and why president, they are considered as part of parliament. Parliament's main role is what? Law making. For any bill, sorry, to make any law, you have to introduce a bill. It should be either introduced in Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, signed by the president, and that is why we say that it comprises of Lok Sabha. Like these kind of stuff you are going to read in prelims. But if you reflect upon your mains question paper, what has come in GS2 or in political science, they are not going to ask these kind of information. That is taken that a person should know all these basic stuff. They are more keen on understanding your analytical abilities. Okay, so mains is more about what? Your fundamentals have to be strong, but along with fundamentals, you also have to know what is happening, what is the current issues which are there. So if you take parliament as a topic, that one of the current issues is that they brought a bill giving representation to women, that is reservation. Now information part you will read from a book. Okay, 106th amendment, 33% reservation, where they have given Lok Sabha, state assemblies, Delhi. Okay, from when it will come into implementation after the next census. Okay, for how many years it has given 15 years, etc. etc. And for mains, now apart from knowing this, they won't only ask this, right? What is 106th amendment? They might ask a question saying that, do you think 106th constitutional amendment which has been enacted will lead to political empowerment in India? Comment. Now when you need to write this answer, of course you will have to know what is 106th amendment, but along knowing it, you have to be able to analyze and tell, okay, first angle you are going to think, why first of all women have to be represented. Okay, so in a political science answer, maybe you will also link this guy, JS Mill. So same thing, see what JS Mill told, in generally also we can agree as a normal point. Maybe in a GS paper you don't need to mention JS Mill, but you can still mention the same argument brought by JS Mill in your answer. Maybe in a political science paper you will have to mention about JS Mill and his work. Okay, but please remember, even in political science paper, the question is not on JS Mill, the question is about representation of women. JS Mill only represents a link. So you can't make your answer wholly about who is JS Mill in part B. You have to speak about more Indian parliament. You have to speak about data. What is data? You can write according to PRS, the representation of women in current Indian parliament, that is 18th Lok Sabha, it is around 15%, whereas women constitute 50% of the country's population. So that is why they are underrepresented. Second argument, okay, why women have to be represented? So you have to say that if women representation is not there in the parliament, laws won't be gender sensitized. as women are the primary caregivers in family. So women's inputs in many kind of bills, because there are many bills concerning health, there is many bills concerning children, etc. You do need women input. Okay. Or third argument, you can even bring of a Plato's point of view, where he told gender does not matter when it comes to contribution to the state. Then you are going to also bring the argument that what, by bringing this bill which is reserved, now this will bring more women who all these years were limited to private sphere, it will come into public sphere. It can also contribute to the productivity of parliament. Why? Because studies have shown women led panchayats have been more effective in their functioning compared to the male counterparts. That is also one more argument what you can write in your answer. But then you are going to write a counterpoint now. Okay. Counterpoint is what? Giving only representation does not help. Again you can quote the example of panchayats, where you have told pati panchayats. Now difference in political science and GS, same to same. Maybe in a political science paper I might add a research work of some school, like Sudha Pai. She has done a research. In that research she spoke about what? Pati panchayats. That women empowerment has not truly happened. They have been just face value. Means what? Merely puppets of their husbands. Second argument what you will bring, even though women reservation has been provided, this might only benefit the elite sections of society. Means those women who come from influential families, those women have money power in that regard, they might make use of it, it will not benefit all women. Third argument also what you can make, here we also have to look at that only bringing them into parliament is not sufficient enough, they have to be also trained to work effectively in parliament. So training has to be done, etc., etc. Then you are going to give certain recommendation in your answer. So what you read about mill here, you can link it there. Maybe in a GS answer you don't need to write about mill, but what arguments mill brought, that is valid, whether you are writing mill's name or not writing mill's name. So that is why when you go back, J.S. Mill was one of the strong advocate of what? Giving voting rights for what? Women. Mill wanted women to participate in what? Public sphere. Because Mill believed that when it comes to capabilities, when it comes to capacities, women have equal capabilities compared to what? When you compare to men. But what he told, women have not been given equal opportunity. So women have been always limited to private sphere. So he gave the example of in England, where he analyzed certain laws. So we say Victorian law, means when Queen Victoria was there, laws were brought. Most of these laws were patriarchal in character, means what? It gave more protection, more support, more entitlements to men rather than women. So you need to understand Britain back, what you are speaking about in 1800 or thing, even though you can say after French Revolution, after the American Revolution, we did come about with democracy, ending of feudalism, etc. But it did not naturally lead to empowerment of women. So even if you take French declaration, it speaks about rights of man. The word they have used, it's the rights of man. They have not used the word rights of women. So it took another 2 decades or 3 decades for women to struggle and to get their voting rights. And one of the important advocate for women to be brought into politics was J.S. Mill, because he told when women in England, they are teachers, they are doctors, they are nurses, and they are managing these estates. So it shows that they are equally capable. It's not that they are not capable, but why? Because they have not been in an opportunity. So he told women can take rational decisions. Women also have equal rationality equal to men. So when you have given men voting rights, you have to also give women voting rights. You also have to allow women to what? Participate in public sphere, in parliament. So that is why he also wrote this essay or a letter to the British Parliament, asking that what? They have to include women. And that is why we say that J.S. Mill influenced the suffrage movements across the world, especially in Europe. What is suffrage movement? Where they demanded voting rights for women. And ultimately you can say that in 1893 it was New Zealand which became the first country in the world to give what? Voting rights to women. And since then you can say in various other countries they have included women into public sphere. Okay. But largely even today when we look at the overall representation of women into politics or public sphere is minimal only. Okay, for example, if you take a country like India, India is the world's largest democracy. But we cannot tell Indian democracy is the most inclusive democracy. That can't be said. And always you can say parliament is a reflection of our social inclusion. So, for example, now if you connect the dots, now what is the women representation in Indian parliament? It is just 15%. Now it's a different ball game that we'll discuss in part B, that why in India women representation is. There we have to look into money power, muscle power, patriarchal character of Indian society. That we will understand better when we do the topic on feminism, and then we connect to Indian parliament. But for now, if you look at Indian parliament, 15%. So I'm looking from a gender angle. Okay, but I can look at parliament also not only from gender angle, I can look at many angles. Class angle. 88% of Indian parliamentarians, MPs in Lok Sabha are crorepati's. So clearly indicating that what? Money power plays a key role. Or if you look at the Muslim population in India, it is around 14%. Okay, the biggest minority in India. But yet the Muslim representation in parliament is below 4%. So they are underrepresented. That's a different ballgame. Why they are underrepresented? That we'll discuss when we do minorities, etc., etc. But here our primary agenda is to understand Mill's views on what? Why did he strongly advocate voting rights for women? You are getting a point. See, notes is meant for what? Getting keywords, works written by scholars. That's it. When you understand the way you have to be able to explain, you can use your own words, there is nothing wrong in it. You can bring some comparison and tell, there is nothing wrong in it. So that time what will happen, your thought process will be more organic. You are not trying to inorganically just try to cut, copy, paste. See, that's the difference. Problem what happens in school and college is that we try to read sentence how it is given in the book itself and try to reproduce the same sentence in answer. That will work out in your school or college. Why? Because the syllabus is small, you are reading only one book. Here it's not like that, question can come multiple ways. So your understanding has to be good. So understanding, break down your understanding. Okay, Mill, strong advocate of women voting rights. Question is that why? The why component you understand. Why he is telling? He is telling because women are equivalent to men. J.S. Mill said that women have equal capabilities, capacities. But what is the problem? They have not been given equal opportunities. So he says it is natural justice. What is natural justice? Naturally when women constitute so and so percentage, they have to be also represented, because a democracy means what? It is representation of the people in a representative model of democracy. You understood, right? Representative model means what? Somebody is representing us. So when somebody is representing us, why does identity also matters is that because you cannot tell a man is completely capable of representing a woman's interest in parliament. Simple, na? So even if you look at why representation is required, take Indian national movement, opposition to Simon Commission. Simon Commission was opposed because Simon Commission did not give any representation to Indians. So point is that those who are in that committee, those who are going to study the problems of Indians, how they can understand what is the problem of Indians when you don't have Indians in the committee itself. It's like you are telling you are going to make a study on Dalits in that regard and you are going to appoint a committee and you are telling only Brahmins are, I am not telling Brahmins are against Dalits, that's not the point I am trying to make. I am trying to say when you have representation from there, at least one or at least two, then you will have a perspective of them. So same way, men cannot truly replicate women's interest. So you need representation from them itself directly in parliament. So that is what Mill told. Women have equal capabilities, that has been seen all over England, he told, but women have not been given equal opportunity. And he told it is larger benefit if women are brought into parliament. Why? Because one, gender sensitization of laws will happen. And he also argued that bringing women into parliament will also make men behave better, and it will also contribute to the parliamentary productivity. And hence Mill argued that what? Women have to be given voting rights. But knowing Mill from before also, you can know that he is a reluctant Democrat. In that sense, he is not saying that every woman will be giving voting rights. Those who are educated and those who have property. So if you see in India, I am telling British rule in India, the Government of India Act 1919, it did give voting rights to women in India, but it did not give voting rights to all women. It only gave voting rights to women, those who are propertied and those who are educated. And what is Mill's contribution now? That is why we can say Mill's contribution is that what his ideas were able to shape, influence the feminist movements, suffrage movements, women's suffrage means voting rights for women across Europe. And this also led to what many European countries giving women franchise, means right to vote and participate in public affairs. Okay, so the initial idea was mooted by J.S. Mill, and that is why they have also asked questions, direct questions, saying that J.S. Mill's view on women suffrage means women voting rights directly. So all you need to do is explain this. But yeah, maybe if you want to analyze the present and tell, you can say, okay, so though there were strong women movements, etc., but across the world still a lot of changes needs to happen. Means maybe in Europe, women are truly represented, women have been included in parliament. But even if you take the world's oldest democracy, that is United States of America, till today never has had a woman president. These are the points you observe and write. I am not telling it's given in a book. You are getting what do you mean by making your answer innovative, making your answer think. Or that's why I told many times when we read editorial page, there they would have highlighted these kind of points. See, America is the world's oldest democracy. But even till now, since Americans' democracy is coming to being, America is still yet to have their first woman president. Not the case. India is the world's largest democracy, but yet the representation of women in parliament is below 15%. United Nations, which is the world's, you can say, platform for all countries to discuss, debate, etc., has not had a woman secretary general till today. Where we will connect these points? We will connect these points in PSIR paper 2. That's why I am telling you, not everything is interlinked. Syllabus might look big, but when you start reading them, you will understand that it is not so big, because everything is interconnected, everything is repetitive. It's only small change in dimension. In part A, theory, paper 1. Part B, application to Indian context. Paper 2, international. Simple, that's the area of focus. Just I am changing it. So you take in international level also, number of women who have become UN Secretary General, 0. Get a point? But yeah, we are changing, we are seeing a change. Even now, there is constant movement by women groups, etc., demanding that what women have to be included. So first step was taken by the Indian government, where you can say they provided 33% representation to women in parliament. Or now you can see India became the first country in the world to send an all women contingent to peacekeeping forces to a country called as Liberia. That's what I told. Here you can just collect the points and add. But please remember, don't be blown away by these points. If a question is on Mill, 90% of your answer should be what is there in a book on Mill, why he gave. Only maybe 10% you are going to give a link. That's still, you have come a long way, but still there is yet more distance to cover. But the starting point of this starts with Mill. Even before Mill, if you take Plato, because Plato was a strong advocate. But why that time we didn't consider Plato or some criticize Plato? Because as I told, Plato's idea was what? Women are the means, state is the end. Means he did allow women to come to public sphere, but his end goal was not women empowerment. His end goal was empowerment of the state. For that, women can be also utilized. So he gave a more utilitarian approach towards what? Bringing women into politics. But J.S. Mill spoke more about a system that why that women are equivalent to men. Understood? J.S. Mill's view on what? Women Sarfaraj. And largely when we come to J.S. Mill view on property, you can say, you can take from here, J.S. Mill one of the strongest advocate of right of ownership of property, that is private ownership of property. But yet Mill, that's why we say, why we call Mill as a transitional thinker, yet Mill was considered to the fact that private means like Aristotle, what he told, private ownership, common use, means whatever private ownership is there, it should also benefit to the society at large. That is what you can write about J.S. Mill. So largely they have not asked Mill's view on property and all, they only mainly asked on Mill's view on women suffrage, democracy, his views on liberty. 99% of the questions have been all in these areas. So when you look at Mill's contribution, you can say same thing. If there is anybody we can call liberal, it is J.S. Mill. J.S. Mill's contribution also is that he is the thinker from whom we start seeing accommodation of certain socialist, means we can say what Ivor Brown, he says that Mill's idea of what you can say this capitalism, he says that he supports the idea of the atomistic man, but it should be compatible with the idea of socialism. In state can perform certain positive functions also, but it is still not very much clear. The further scholars will bring more clarity, like T.H. Green, Lusky, McIver, etc. That you will understand once we read liberalism as an ideology. So that is also one of the contribution of J.S. Mill. He is a transitional thinker. He is taking liberalism towards what, positive liberty. But again you can say some also consider him as a proponent of negative liberty also. And you have J.S. Mill's contribution is also women suffrage, because his writings led to what, women suffrage movements across the world. And you can say J.S. Mill's other contribution is freedom of speech and expression. That is core part of many modern day constitutions. Take Indian constitution, article 19, 1 clause A, freedom of speech and expression. His harm principle in that regard has also brought what, a balance between an individual right to express, but at the same time not causing harm to others. And these are what we can say contribution of J.S. Mill to Western political thought. This is what you have to know regarding J.S. Mill. So that's what I told. Here are all the English scholars: Hobbes, Locke, Bentham and Mill. If you have a clarity understanding of their ideas, it's very easy to write in exam, because these are all repetitive questions that will come. Okay, but the only thing where you need to make an impact is that the way you write, that you need to practice a bit. Any doubt here regarding Mill? So let's look into few questions they have asked on Mill and what answer we are able to write. And I hope you are reading the notes. Okay, just listening to class won't help. Only when you read notes, you revise it multiple times, then you will get hold over writing. So take on the first question on Mill, what they have asked in previous year. So take it on as John Stuart Mill as a reluctant Democrat, C.L. Vapor. John Stuart Mill as a reluctant Democrat, C.L. Vapor. Comment: ten marks, and you have to write in 150 words. What did you write? See, plain and simple. Go back to what we have discussed all these days. This is a statement which is made by a third party. Means what? It's not made by Mill, it's a statement made by somebody on Mill. Who is that somebody? It is Vapor. For us, life history of Vapor, who is this Vapor, that is not important. For us, what is more important? What he has said about Mill. So what he has told about Mill? He is a reluctant Democrat. So don't write in your introduction again, Vapor said he is a reluctant. Question they only given. So you don't need to repeat again, because these are 10 marker, 150 words. So what we can introduce our answer as, J.S. Mill has been considered as one of the greatest proponent of the liberty. We popularly say if there is anybody who is liberal, it is Mill, and Mill was a very strong advocate and a defender of democracy as a ideal form of government. That I am going to write as my introduction. And I say, in spite of Mill's views on democracy, he has been critiqued. That what? He is a reluctant democrat for the following reasons. Now if you want, I can write in point format also here. 1. Mill says that democracy is not a free gift, that it can be distributed everywhere. Mill says that democracy is not compatible with colonies, because in colonies there are barbarians. For democracy to survive, there should be civilized. Third, though he is a strong advocate of participatory democracy, but for practical purpose, he says that representative democracy is a more practical form of government. And in representative democracy, he brings further limitations or certain safeguards. Bicameralism, voting rights will be given based on what? Property and education. He also introduced plural voting, weighted voting. Okay, hence he has been critiqued by what? As a reluctant democrat, because on one hand he supports democracy, on the other hand he also limits the application of democracy to all sections of society. Last part of the answer, you can say that according to some, Mill's views on representation reflects ethnocentric. The word ethnocentric, keyword, what is ethnocentric? Looking at something from the point of view of the society where you come from. So he was from Europe, he was an Englishman, so he always considered them to be superior and everybody else is inferior. Or some say his views on colonies also want to justify the British rule of the colonies. But nevertheless, we can say one cannot deny his contribution to democracy, because he also advocated for women rights, etc. But at the same time, what we can say, like people like Gandhi, Nehru, they believed that if people cannot come to democracy, democracy should be taken to their doorsteps. Full stop. End your answer. So here the question was what? Mill as a reluctant democrat. And how did I base my answer? First I explained that why they criticize him as a reluctant democrat. Then I brought my analysis also, saying that why Mill might have given certain views, because it was more ethnocentric. He wanted to justify the British rule to colonies. So that is one contradiction. What is one contradiction? On one hand he is telling that democracy should be there, on the other hand he is also saying that what? It cannot be extended everywhere. You can also bring a positive point on that, saying that why he might be saying like that, because he is very concerned about democracy, because people have sacrificed lives for achieving democracy, so he does not want to lose this achievement by promoting democracy everywhere. But nevertheless, you can say that Mill's view cannot be always considered correct, because he told, it is not suitable to colonies, it is not suitable to people like India, but India has proved Mill wrong. That what? We are the world's largest democracy, and we have survived and sustained to do so. Understood what you can write in your answer? And that's why I told, for you to write and structure it, it is very more important. You have to sit and practice, think that what will be your introduction, what will be the next point you are going to write. And that's why I told for some of you that, see, starting 2 months or maybe even 3 months when you are writing answers, don't think that you can write answers by closing your book. That won't be possible in initial period. Open your book, read and write, refer internet, refer model answers, refer answers written by others, toppers answer scripts, anything you can do. You can read first, brainstorm, then write. So first step is what you are improving on your skill, ability to think, ability to structure, improve the sentence formation. Second step, what will make an improvement? Your ability to decode the question correctly. Third level of improvement is what? Now being able to produce the answer within 7 minutes or 9 minutes, whatever is it. By this all you do, you should have revised the topic at least 3 to 4 times. Only then you are in a position to write without seeing. So don't have these hopes of saying that I am going to write my answer initially only without seeing, it will be very difficult. That's why I told, see and write, there is no problem in it. Understood? Any doubt in this question? Next question you take down as all silencing of discussion all silencing of discussion is an assumption of infallibility. All silencing of discussion is an assumption of infallibility. Comment. All silencing of discussion is an assumption of infallibility. Now this is the question, and 10 marks it was asked in 2014. What will you write, or what can you write? See, many times as I told, forget about what you have read in a book. Forget about what you have read in a book. Just read the sentence. So don't make your mind think that where it is there in the notes or where it is there in the book. First read the question, understand the question, then you can think about the book. So what is that statement meaning? What do you mean by that? Even online students, if they know, they can just type in their understanding of the sentence. Abdul, water. See, generally understand, if it's right, if it's wrong, it's okay. Just try to bring your interpretation. Discussions are okay. But tell me the meaning of that sentence. Why you should not be silenced? What is the meaning of word infallibility? Eternal means you can't fail itself. So basically what the sentence says that if you think by suppressing everybody's voice, okay, so for example, Arnab Goswami in his show will keep shouting over everybody else, and he always thinks that I won the debate. Meaning of the quote is that not just by shouting over others, suppressing others, not allowing others to speak. It's an assumption. Assumption means when you assume this is a way, but reality is different. You are assuming what? You are infallible. Means you are eternal. There is no part of defeat. What Mill is trying to say, you link that point, he is a strong advocate of freedom of speech and expression. He says in any society, people should be allowed to freely express their opinion. He also says that even a madman should be allowed to speak, because you don't know where the truth will come from. In every argument, what Mill argues, there is some element of truth. It is only when there is a free discussion, free debate in society, it will be beneficial for individual. You have written now, it causes individual's development, self-actualization. It also benefits society at large. Why? Because society will also come to closer to truth. So Mill is saying that what? You should not silence people. The role of the state should be allowing people to freely express themselves, and he speaks about three kinds of liberty: liberty of thought and expression, liberty of action, and liberty to form association. And he also says that what? No state can become great by dwarfing their own individuals. And that is why we consider Mill as what? One of the strongest advocate of what? Liberty. And that is why we say if there is anybody who is liberal, that is J.S. Mill. And last part, you can just bring your comments on it, saying that these Mill's ideas in that regard have largely shaped the modern day constitutions, including the Indian constitution, which allows individuals to express their opinion. Then, if it was a 20 marker question, maybe I would have gone into criticism part also in detail, like when Barker criticizes him as what? Prophet of empty liberty. Why he criticizes prophet of empty liberty? Because he says that this self-regarding action, others regarding action, that is one problem. Second one, he is only promoting negative liberty, he is not promoting positive liberty. Okay, they give a 20 marker question. In a 10 marker question, you no need to explain. If you want, you can add the critic, saying that however, Barker criticizes Mill as what? Prophet of empty liberty. So, to answer this question, all you have to do is that you should have understand the quote. All silencing of discussion is an assumption of infallibility. Now, what is the benefit of solving previous year questions? Now, let us think next year or this year, they ask a question, comment on J.S. Mill's view on liberty. Now, already I know a quote to use in my answer. That what Mill said, all silencing of discussion is an assumption of infallibility. So, in simple terms, the question is linked to what? Mill's view on freedom of or on liberty. That's it. You are getting my point. So, they can ask two ways. They could have asked it directly, but instead of that, they chose a particular quote to ask the question to see whether the candidate can decode the question and link to what context he is saying it, what he is saying, why he is saying, and what is the implications of what he is saying. Maybe you can add one critic, but however, Barker calls Mill as what? Prophet of empty liberty. 10 marker question, you don't need to explain in detail why he calls him as prophet, just write and end your answer. Got it? Any doubt? So understood. That's why I told, for some times, please focus on your English. Okay. Why I am telling again and again, UPSC claims that what the English what is required for this exam is a basic level, 10th standard level. But in reality, how papers are set, even your prelims paper, etc., the language what they're using in the exam is bit on higher standards itself. You open GS papers and also see like the questions what they've asked. Many times it is very difficult to understand what exactly they're asking. It does not mean that you need to join some English classes. All you have to do is just know. See, there is two ways of knowing English. One, you can be very good the way you speak, etc. Maybe other way you are able to understand what is there, but you are expressing in your own way, that is also fine. As long as your English is as good as understanding, sufficient for the exam. So that is what I told. Certain times, even though we don't know the word infallible, we can make a guess. All silencing of discussion is an assumption of infallibility. Infallible means non-rejectable, you can't be defeated. Right? So if, I think in modern history, when you have read Raja Ram Mohan Roy started Brahma Samaj. Brahma Samaj believed that Vedas are not infallible. You have read this, na? It is there in Spectrum, Bipin Chandra, everything. What he told? He told Vedas are not infallible. So what do you mean by Vedas are not infallible? Vedas are not perfect. They are fallible. Fallible means there can be certain wrongs in that. So what did this fellow say? All silencing of discussion is an assumption of infallibility. By suppressing everybody, you think that you are not defeatable. You are infallible, means you are perfect. He told, no, that is not the way to get perfection. You can only become perfect. Means what he's trying to say, if I have an idea and I believe that idea is correct from my point of view, but I can only understand what I think is correct if I am ready to experiment with my idea and allowing that idea to be questioned. If it is not questioned, then you are assuming that idea is perfect. And why he is telling that should be allowed to be questioned? Because only when questions will come, maybe you will also realize that there are some demerits to your idea. And that is contributing to whom? That is contributing to your own benefit also. Why? Because since you allowed your ideas to be tested, you are also getting inputs that how you can modify that idea into a better thing. But if you are not allowing any discussion on it, on any debate on it, you will not have. If I want to give a practical example, the difference between bringing an ordinance and bringing it in a form of a bill will go through discussion, debates, etc. And why it should go through that process? Because you always have to allow people to express their opinion on the bill. Maybe who knows that maybe certain parts of the bill you had never thought about it. Now when another person gives an idea, you might better your bill. It will also have greater legitimacy. What do you mean by greater degree of legitimacy? People will accept it. Why accept it? He told now, even if a madman is arguing, if you give him an opportunity, through debates he can also understand his point of view was also wrong. So he told overall there is a greater benefit by allowing discussions, debates, etc. Any kind of suppression of discussion, debates, you assume to be what? Infallible. There also you can make a clear sense that Mill is one of a strong Democrat. Why we say strong Democrat? The hallmark of democracy is what? Liberty. Okay, you cannot tell democracy is all about only voting in elections. Voting is also a form of expression. Okay, but democracy cannot be seen only as a procedural aspect, that what we do elections. Democracy has multiple values to it, and one of the strong value to it is what? A free society. What do you mean by a free society? Where people can freely express their opinion. Understood? So that's why I told, if your understanding is very good, pretty easy to write the answer. The only thing is that you have to understand what is the statement. All silencing of discussion is an assumption of infallibility. That is what I am going to explain in my answer, what Mill is trying to say. Understood? Next question you take down. Mill was the prophet. Mill was the prophet of empty liberty. Mill was a prophet of empty liberty, and abstract individual. Prophet of empty liberty and an abstract individual. Barker. Barker. 15 marks. You have to write the answer. So tell, what will you write? What will you write? Read the question again. Mill was a prophet of empty liberty and an abstract. What is the meaning of abstract? What is the meaning of abstract? Or what is the meaning of prophet? Simple, na? Prophet is somebody who preaches things. So what is he telling? This fellow is preaching empty liberty. Basically from sentence you can understand it's a critic. Barker is a critic. So if you want about Barker, Barker is more of a positive liberal. Barker is a positive liberal. What do you mean by positive liberal? For him, true meaning of liberty is not just state not interfering in your personal sphere. For him, true meaning of liberty when state builds capacity of people to achieve their self-attained goals. For him, that is the true meaning of liberty. But here he is calling what? This fellow is a prophet of empty liberty and an abstract individual. What is the meaning of abstract? What do you mean in general meaning? If you want to interpret knowing about Mill, I am not asking the dictionary meaning. In general, what it can mean? Okay. So you can say something like here, an individual who does not or who separated from society, or an individual who always think about only himself, or what you call as atomistic man. So the idea of liberty what this fellow is promoting, he is only promoting the idea on the assumption of man being what? The principle of atomistic man. For Barker, that is a very narrow way of looking at liberty. For him, liberty should be what? Very broad. So Barker also criticized Mill, saying that even that liberty what he is promoting of this abstract, because abstract means you don't know about the individual. So he says that there is self-regarding action, there is others regarding action. In others regarding action, state can intervene. Even in self-regarding action, when you are endangering your life, the state can stop a person from crossing a bridge that is about to collapse. And what he says that there is a lot of confusion. What confusion? Every self-regarding action can be interpreted by the state as what? Others regarding action, and that will give legitimacy to the state to intervene and take away individuals' freedom. Second level of criticism is what? That he is a prophet of empty liberty. Why his liberty is empty? Because he is only speaking about the perspective of negative liberty. He is not actually written on positive liberty. For Barker, liberty means not just absence of restrictions. Liberty also means building capacities in individuals for them to attain their self-appointed goals. That is what you need to write in your first part of your answer. But maybe in later part of your answer, you can say, in spite of these criticisms, one cannot disregard Mill's contribution of freedom of speech and expression. So I won't start my answer immediately with Ernst Barker. I will start my answer with Mill. I am going to first explain Mill's idea of liberty on his book, what is written on liberty, what is his arguments. Then I am going to bring Barker and I am going to link Barker's criticism, and then I am going to conclude my answer saying that in spite of this criticism, we cannot deny Mill's contribution to Western political thought. He brought back the focus from utility to liberty in that regard, and you can say that he is also transitional thinker. Why? Because slowly there is movement towards what? And that Ivor Brown, what he told, Mill's, Mill tried to bring compatibility between the liberalism as well as bit of socialism. His idea of atomistic man is premised on the socialism. So that is what you can write in your answer. Understood? So it again depends upon how do you understand the question. So Mill as a prophet of empty liberty. So you have to answer, first of all speak about Mill's idea of liberty, then you speak about why this fellow is telling that idea of liberty is empty. Okay, and how that idea of liberty is based on not understanding the true nature of man. Because for Barker, it's like what Aristotle believed, man is a social animal. Man can only live in a group, man can only live in a society. But this fellow is looking at individual as what? Atomistic man. And that is why he says that that idea of individual leads to what? A very narrow interpretation of liberty. For him, true interpretation of liberty is what? Positive liberty. That is what you need to write in this answer. So again you can say this is a straightforward question. I don't know, there will be some questions when you need to link other points and write, but this is a question that is not required, directly you can write. Directly, because same, it's simple sense, critic of Mill's view on liberty. You are explaining Barker's point of view, why he criticized him. Okay, then you are also commenting on it, saying that to what extent you agree with his criticism and where you might disagree with what he is saying. So that is the meaning of Mill was a prophet of empty liberty and abstract individual. If they ask the question for 15 marks, you can easily explain. 10 marks, don't explain Mill's idea starting in detail, just briefly write what kind of liberty he spoke about and directly come to the point of criticism and explain that why Barker is criticizing prophet of empty. Your answer is done. Conclusion, you can always write bit on positive aspect, that in spite of this criticism, he has always been a central figure when it comes to liberal. Or you can write, as we famously say, if there is anybody who is liberal, that is J.S. Mill. Next question you take down as the worth of a state is worth of individual comprising it. The worth of the state is the worth of individuals comprising it. Comment. Worth of the state is the worth of the individuals comprising it. J.S. Mill, 15 marks. What will you write? What will you write, or what can you write? Simple, same thing. The ulta way of saying that no state can become great by dwarfing its. See, answer is same. There is nothing different. If they ask the question on Mill's view on liberty, or if they ask no state can become great by dwarfing its own individuals, or if they say worth of the state is worth of individuals comprising it, maybe I have to just bring modification in the way I write. Idea remains the same. So first here from that statement, what I can understand, he is speaking about relation between state and individual. So for him, from this point, what we can understand, it is similar to what Plato said. What did Plato say? State is individual writ large. State is a magnified version of individual. So worth of every state means if a state have to be good, the individuals in that state have to be also good. If the state has to do something great, the individuals in that state will have to do something great. So here state is nothing but a reflection of the quality of individuals comprising it. And for Mill, being a liberal, going into human nature, he believed that what? For man, most important thing, he has reason. Since he has reason, he wants liberty, he wants to be left alone, atomistic man, because only when he is left alone, he can be at his best. And state should allow person to express his opinion. Only when he freely expresses his opinion, he can be at his best. Individual should be also allowed to form association, means like-minded people coming together and trying to achieve a goal. People also should be not allowed only to express their opinion, should also act upon it. So that the three important aspects of liberty. So only when these are allowed, individuals will also be at their best. Only when individuals are at their best, the state. That is why he says that what? No state can become great by dwarfing its own individuals. So in a way, what Mill is speaking about, Mill is advocating the idea of a limited state. Mill is advocating that the state should work in the interest of individuals. It should create avenues for people to freely express their opinion, contribute, and for him there should be free discussions, debates. So that is what he says. You can add that all silencing of discussion is an assumption of infallibility. Understood? The worth of the state is the worth of individuals community. But maybe in critic part you can say, when you are speaking about the worth of individual, this Barker says that he is mooting an idea of what, that how an individual can be at his best if there is only negative liberty. The state should also invest on what, building capacity of individuals. So Barker is advocating more of a positive role to be played by the state, not just negative role to be played by the state. If you want other way of interpretation, you can write for any state its powers to be limited. People in that state, if they question the state, only then it can be limited, right? Our people, they don't question the state itself. So worth of a state is also worth of the individuals comprising it. So for Mill, individual state is nothing but a magnified version of the individual. For any state to do great things or become great, it's very important the individuals in that state, they have certain freedom or they have certain liberty. That is what you need to write your answer. So more or so the question is again the same, but it only difference is the way I write. Remember, for each question what we discuss, almost we are saying the same thing, but in each question we are writing it in a different way based on what is the question they asked. So we are tweaking. Tweaking means what? Making minor changes in the arrangement of the points. You understood? So some people, what they will do is that when they say they are not able to mold their points according to this demand, they will just write about freedom of speech and expression. You have to write about that, but you have to make minor changes. First you have to speak about relation between state and individual. Then you have to speak about how or what is Mill's view on individual. So he says individual can be only at his best if you give him freedom or liberty. Why freedom or liberty? Because he has reason, he knows where to use liberty or not. And then he says that what kind of liberty? Liberty of action, liberty of association, liberty of expression. And why this is very important? Because that will allow an individual to be at his, what you can say, best. Got it? Understood? Any doubt? Understood? Same. So that's why I told, if you see the questions, it is all repetitive questions they are asking. Okay. But what many students will do, the moment they see here, they will think that, oh, okay, this question is not there only. Means, okay, where is this statement? It is not given. So that's what I told. Once you write PYQs, questions can be only statements that you can write in your notes also. So let us think they are asking one more question, some other year. No state can become great by dwarfing its own. Comment. That time in that answer you use this. What is it? The worth of a state is worth of the individuals comprising it. Got it? Any doubt here? Okay, now let us see how you will answer this question, because this you need to think. Okay, you need to think a bit. You can get the answer still, but you still need to think a bit, because this is not a straightforward question. It's based on your understanding. So again the question is, discuss how early radical liberalism early radical liberalism was modified by J.S. Mill. How early radical liberalism was modified by J.S. Mill. So this you can take for 15 marks. And let us see what will you write. So shall think about what you can write. So what you can write, what you can think here. See now, that's why I told here, sometimes these, to answer these kind of questions, you will also have to know what liberalism. That is your ideology topic. Only when you know your ideology topic, you can write very effectively. But still, based on what you have read till now, you can make an attempt to write. Aristotle liberalism ಏನು ಸಂಬಂಧ? Simple like see, Aristotle liberalism ಏನು ಸಂಬಂಧ? Liberalism is an ideology that emerged in 17th century or towards the end of 17th century you can say. There is no link between Aristotle and liberalism. That's the problem again. What you are telling is nothing but another version of what he is saying. Same, individualism means, that is a Greek philosophy. Greek namantara question ku sambandhane illa. There is no link between what the question is asking. There is no connection to Plato, no connection to Aristotle, there is no connection to Socrates. So if you read the question again, discuss how the early radical liberalism was modified by J.S. Mill. So for this you have to know a bit about liberalism. Liberalism, John Locke is considered as the father of liberalism, if you have read. So obviously the word they have used is radical liberalism. What do you mean radical liberalism? Liberalism which is based on radical ideas. So what is radical ideas within liberalism? Like Jeremy Bentham, John Locke. For example, Jeremy Bentham spoke about what? Utilitarianism. He spoke about what? Maximum good for maximum number. Why did he say maximum good for maximum number? Because he told all individuals are same. All individuals want to maximize pleasure, avoid pain. And he told what is society? Society is nothing but collection of these atomistic individuals. So collectively if they are good, that is the welfare of the society. Radical liberalism, like John Locke, they told right to property is central to the ideology or to the philosophy. They spoke about what right to property should be there. The state should not intervene. Early liberalism also defended what, or radical liberalism, it also defended what? It also defended the idea that state should only play negative role. State should not play positive role. It should not intervene. So these were the early ideas of radical liberalism. Individual does not have any contribution to society. But this fellow, to a certain degree, he brought certain modification. One modification of utilitarianism. where he rejected Philippic calculus, where he rejected that individual has a difference with respect to quality of happiness. It's not quantity of happiness. He also said, even when you are enjoying liberty, that all liberty is not given to you to enjoy the way you want. So he brought modification of self-regarding action, others regarding action, and even in self-regarding action, when you are endangering your own life, the state can intervene. So he also became a transitional thinker, moving towards negative liberalism towards positive. Maybe he didn't have all the elements of positive liberalism, but we cannot deny the fact that there is some element of positive liberty. And he also made liberalism or the idea of atomistic man compatible with the idea of socialism. So he told any idea of socialism, if it is compatible with the idea of atomistic man, such ideas can be accepted. Hence, J.S. Mill brought certain elements of modification within liberalism, where he made certain principles of liberalism compatible with principle of socialism, and thus after him the other scholars who came, they promoted the idea of positive liberalism, be it T.H. Green, McIver, etc. That is the answer. So here there is no question to Plato, no link to Aristotle, no link to Socrates. And that's why you are not able to answer this question, because you don't know yet what exactly is liberalism. There is three forms of liberalism: classical liberalism, positive liberalism, neoliberalism. Neoliberalism means 1980s. Okay, it's a time period. So this Locke, Hobbes, Mill is confusing. Why Mill is confusing? Some people seem part of negative liberty. Some people say that he is the first person to initiate the state to intervene. Okay, so he's a transitional thinker. After Mill, you have people like Green, McIver, Lusky, who are more towards what? State should perform positive role. That is only called as positive liberalism. That emerged in 1970s or 1960s. Why it emerged in 1960s and 70s? You have a logical correction with next thinker, what you read, Marx. Because Marx's ideas will start becoming popular. This will start leading to working class movements across the world, especially in Europe. Working class, now they will rise in revolt. To satisfy the working class, now what liberals will do, they will start accommodating or co-opting certain elements of socialism. So they bring the idea of welfare state. But then by 1980s, again this idea will come under criticism. Why? Because they'll tell, when state will try to do both things, on one hand it is balancing liberalism, on the other hand it is balancing socialism, they told it is not possible to balance. And there will be economic crisis. And 1980s in Europe and all, there was bit of what you can say that new ideas emerged. Means bringing back the previous radical liberalism. That is what we call as neoliberalism. You have Hayek, Nozick, Friedman, who are extreme version of liberalism now. They will tell, no, state should not perform any kind of welfare function. They'll give reasons why state should not perform welfare functions. They say state should not work in the interest of the poor. That's not the duty of the state. So these are different phases of liberalism. So they have asked you early radical liberalism. So early radical liberalism ideas are represented by Locke, Bentham, Hobbes, and this fellow. They are asking what he modified and how he modified. That is what you need to be able to write in your answer. Got it? And that's why I told some questions you can answer once your entire part A is completed. This is such question. But I just gave the answer, not what you can write. So that's why I told here, see, don't link Aristotle. Aristotle and liberalism are not directly related. When Aristotle was there was no ideology called as liberalism. Liberalism is an ideology that emerged after this French Revolution, American Revolution, etc. With the rise of liberalism, also capitalism also emerged. Got it? Understood? That how to write the answer. That's why I told for this answer, your answer will be more complete, better if you have read the topic on ideologies. That we have not yet done. Understood? Understood maximum number of Mill's questions. They are largely featuring around liberty, women voting rights, relation between state and individual. Okay. Maybe one or odd question they are asking like this. Got it? But there are some more questions, but similar theme. What you need to do is that write. So one thing what you have to do is by the end of the classes, that is we are speaking about August end or September starting week, you should have written 70% of the PYQ. I am not telling about test series and all. Don't be blinded by test series and all. Test series and all will only come into equation once you have prepared, have content, have written lot of answers, you know how to write. That will be useful. Writing tests for sake of just writing tests is no use at all. See, I can give you weekly test. It's only as a process of what? Giving some service to the students, because some students will tell test barital. Comparison will be also there, right? That in other academy they might give test. In our academy they are not giving test. The question of giving a test, are you in a position to take the test? So test is not required. Practice first PYQ. Write lot of previous year questions. Build the ability. Once in next 3 to 4 months you will build that ability. Once you build that ability, then you write tests. But till then you have to develop the ability to write well, understand well. So understood. Mill's questions. Any doubt on Mill? So the scholars we have done till now: Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, the three of them who represents the Greek political thought. Then you have Machiavelli, who represents the medieval or transition period between medieval and modern times. Written the book called as Prince. The other book is written is called as Discourses. Plato has written the book Republic, Statesman, Law. Aristotle has written the most celebrated book Politics. Then you have read about social contract thinkers. Hobbes, John Locke, social contract thinkers. Another social contract thinker which you have not read for syllabus is Rousseau, but he is not there for syllabus. And then you have Bentham, who gave utilitarian philosophy. Then you have J.S. Mill, who modified the utilitarian philosophy of things and is largely spoken on liberty, women suffrage, property. Okay, strong advocate and defender of what? Democracy. And he is also a transitional thinker between negative liberalism to positive liberalism. This is the summary till now what you have read. Not what you have read, what you have listened. Listening, reading are two different things. You can't score marks in exam just by listening to classes. Classes are 30%. The rest 60% is about we should also sit, read, write. If you do all these things, then you can say, now I have read till this thinker. By just listening to a class, you have not read, you have just listened to it. Means you don't have clarity, I have clarity. And when you will get that clarity, if you revise it multiple times, only then you will get that clarity. The next scholar whom we are going to read is Karl Marx. Okay, and he is a big scholar. Why big scholar? As I told, Marx, what you are going to read, it is also same to same what you are going to read on ideology topic. Marxism. Marxism is nothing but ideas of Karl Marx. Understood? So it's a repetition. What you read about Karl Marx repeats itself in what? Marxism. Again in paper 2, if you take international relations, Marxist understanding of no different. If you know about Marx, you can predict it. But when we say Marxists, Marxist means followers of Karl Marx. So every follower of Karl Marx might have given certain modification to his ideas. Either they can modify the idea or they might have added to that idea. And that is where it also becomes important for you not only to understand Karl Marx, the next scholar of Karl Marx, Gramsci, Antonio Gramsci, we call him as a neo-Marxist. What is the meaning of neo? Something new he has brought to Marxism. That we'll read later. First we'll have to understand about Marx. And if you look at Marx, Marx means among all the thinkers what you read, Aristotle, Plato, Hobbes, Locke, they gave ideas, okay, like Locke, considered as father of liberalism. But liberalism is not named after Locke. We don't say it is Lockeanism. Why we don't like that? Because for liberalism is a very broad idea. Locke is part of that idea. There are many other parts, Mill, Hobbes. But with Marx it's not like that. Marx itself is the idea, and that is why if you see an entire ideology has been named after a particular person, that is Marxism. And Karl Marx remains debatable in every society, not only society, in the world. So we say Marx can be God to some, Marx is also considered to be devil for some, and that is why you can say he is like Narendra Modi. Either you like Modi, either you hate Modi, but you can never ignore Modi in Indian politics. The same way you might like Karl Marx, you might hate Karl Marx, but you cannot ignore Karl Marx and his works. Means the impact has been great, and that is what we say. Marx is a divided figure. In that sense, one part of the world consider him to be a god. Why God? Because he told the truth, he told people. And other part of the world says that he is a devil. Okay, that we need to understand what is the God thing about him, or what is the devil in him, etc., and why he continues to remain. Even in India, you can say the leftists who are there, largely their ideas derived from the foundation, or the base goes to what? Marx. Okay, so that you need to understand his ideas first. What are the important ideas given by Karl Marx? So if you look at Karl Marx, where was he born? Where was he born? He was born in Germany, not Russia. Okay, Russia was where his ideas were implemented. He was born in Germany. That time it was not even Germany, it was called Prussia. It's a state in Germany. So Marx, later he went to England, where he did most of his studies, and along with his long time friend, there's one more close friend of Marx called as Friedrich Engels. Together they authored a book which is called as the Communist Manifesto. The major, there are many works written by him. He's written works on the Brumaire of 18th century Napoleon Bonaparte. He's also written a work called as Das Kapital, which is his ideas on economy. He's written Communist Manifesto. These are the important notable works of Karl Marx. So we are going to study about his ideas. Okay, why he gave these ideas, what was his viewpoint, where we can agree with him, where we can disagree with him, why he is so popular, both ways. So usually if you look at capitalist countries or liberalism, capitalism, they always consider Marx as their hardcore enemy, because the ideas what he gave was against capitalism. Major idea of Marx was against capitalism. So to understand Marx, you also have to understand capitalism. In simple terms, what Marx says that socialism will never arise in vacuum. It is mandatory for every society which goes through the phase of capitalism that will give birth to socialism. So he says, from the old womb, new seeds come. Meaning, after capitalism, socialism will be born. It is inevitable. You cannot stop the birth of socialism. Any society that undergoes through capitalism, they will have to next move towards what? Socialism. That is a major point. That we will look into what he means by that, what he says. So there is a small video on Marx, but this video is mainly based on the from a capitalist point of view, that how they see Marx. That's why from a capitalist point of view, Marx means thing. Just a sec.
Ideas have consequences. Sometimes good, sometimes
Volume.
bad, sometimes catastrophic. Like the ideas of Karl Marx. Born in Trier, Germany in 1818, Marx didn't invent communism. But it was on his ideas that Lenin and Stalin built the Soviet Union, Mao built communist China, and innumerable other tyrants, from the Kims in North Korea to the Castros in Cuba, built their communist regimes. Ultimately, those regimes and movements calling themselves 100 million people and enslaved more than 1 billion. Marx believed that workers, specifically those who did manual labor, were exploited by capitalists, the people who owned, as Marx put it, the means of production, specifically factories, but who did very little physical labor themselves. Only a workers' revolution, Marx wrote in Das Kapital, could correct this injustice. What would that revolution look like? Marx and his collaborator, Friedrich Engels, spelled it out point by point in the Communist Manifesto. It included the abolition of property and inheritance, and the centralization of credit, communication, and transport in the hands of the state, and a lot more along the same lines. In other words, the state owns and controls pretty much everything. This notion was widely discussed and debated in European intellectual circles during Marx's lifetime, but nothing much came of it until Vladimir Lenin took power in Russia in 1917. This changed everything. Despite its repeated economic failures, Lenin's Russia, which became known as the Soviet Union, became the model for dictators around the world. Wherever Marx's ideas were practiced, life got worse. Not by a little, but by a lot. There is not a single exception to this rule. Not the Soviet Union, not Eastern Europe, not China, not North Korea, not Vietnam, not Cuba, not Venezuela, not Bolivia, not Zimbabwe. Wherever Marxism goes, economic collapse, terror, and famine follow. So, if cataclysmic failure, meaning terrible human suffering, is the inevitable legacy of Marxism, why do so many people, and now especially young people, defend it? The most common answer Marxism's advocates offer is that they, whoever they are, Lenin, Stalin, Chavez, never really practiced Marxism. They all somehow got it wrong. Marxism, we are told, is, at its essence, about sharing what we have, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs, as Marx put it. Maybe that sounds good to you, but what does it mean? Who determines ability? Who determines need? The answer is the state, the ruling elite. Under Marxism, that's who has all the power. That's why the truth is this. Marxist dictators like Lenin, Mao, and Pol Pot really did get Marxism right. They wanted absolute power, and Marxism gave them the way to get it. Karl Marx never had to face the consequences of his theories. He lived most of his adult life breathing the free air of London, England, living off the generosity of his collaborator and patron, Engels, who, as it happens, inherited his money from his wealthy merchant father. Marx spent his days in the reading room of the British Museum, researching and writing. Although he was obsessed with the term scientific, he was never able to marshal data to prove his theories. There's a good reason for this. There was no data to prove his theories. For all his time in the library, Marx couldn't find any evidence to suggest that capitalism, the free exchange of goods and services, and privately owned business, was a passing phase. Throughout the industrial age, working conditions constantly improved and wealth expanded. Marx had to rely on outdated reports to make his case. But even then, he had to manipulate the data to get it to conform to his predetermined theories. But Marx really had no interest in proving his theories. He knew that they could be put into practice only by brute force. He said so himself. Of course, in the beginning, communism cannot be effected except by means of despotic inroads, he wrote. His ends could be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. All existing social conditions. That's religion, family, personal possessions, freedom, and democracy. They all had to go in order to achieve Marx's vision of an earthly paradise. But since few people give up their liberties and property voluntarily, creating a Marxist state has always required guns, prisons, and summary executions. Marx's many disciples, from Lenin on, never considered this a problem. Some, like revolutionary poster boy Che Guevara, considered it a bonus. I don't need proof to execute a man, Che is said to have boasted. I only need proof that it's necessary to execute. You're still a fan of Marxism after all the death, suffering, and destruction it's caused? That's your right. But own up to it. Don't hide behind the, it's never really been tried line. It has. I'm Paul Kagor, professor of political science at Grove City College for Prager University.
So
Thank you for watching this.
basically this is the Western view on Karl Marx, means especially the capitalist or liberalism. You might have another view where you can say it is pro-Marx. Okay, so what is the debate between Marx so much? Because that is where you need to understand his ideas. Then you will be free to decide whether you in favor of Marx or you are against Marx, or you can also find a middle path. So in simple terms, entire Marx's writings, we say it is based on his critique of capitalism. Okay. To understand that, you need to understand basic concepts to read Marx. So like what are the basic concepts we'll have to do to understand, or basic ideas given by Karl Marx? One, you have to know something what he speaks about dialectical materialism and historical materialism. Dialectical materialism and historical materialism. This I will explain later, what do you mean by dialectical materialism. But in simple terms, please remember Marx belongs to a school of materialism, completely opposite to what? Plato. Plato belongs to school of what? Idealism. So for Plato, ideas shape matter. For Marx, it is your material condition that shape your ideas. Then you need to also understand about Marx's view on human nature. So when you read this, you will understand, or you will find he is telling different to Aristotle. Well, man is a social animal, but he says man can live without the state. There is no need of state, or man has lived without this. So that will give you an understanding of human. That is very essential to understand his writings. Okay, what he thinks about humans are. Then you will need to understand Marx's idea of what the class conflict. To understand Marx's idea of class conflict, you will have to have an understanding of bit about history in the sense how different classes have been there in humanity. Take a historical analysis of it. Then you will have to understand what we call as means of production. You will have to understand there is something called as mode of production. To understand there is something called as relations of production. Then you will also have to understand Marx's critique of capitalism. Then you will also have to understand Marx's view on revolution. Then you need to understand Marx's idea of socialism. Then you also need to understand, because when you read our critique of capitalism, you also have to understand his idea of, he has given a theory called as theory of surplus value. Theory of surplus value. Connected to revolution, you also have to understand is one more theory, that is what? Theory of alienation. Or we also say that Marx's understanding of freedom. So that's why liberty and freedom for Marx, they are different. They are not the same. Then you also need to understand Marx's view on state. Do we need state? What is the role of the state? Etc. etc. Then you will also have to understand the ultimate goal or etc. What Marx tell. The perfect state, what we can achieve is communism. Study of communism. So these are the elements that you are going to study about Karl Marx. These are the important ideas and they are all interconnected. So if you understand each one of them in parts, only then you will be able to understand Marx in totality. So that is what we will be doing in our next class. So understanding Marx's ideas. So there we have to get major ideas from his work called as Communist Manifesto. So here we are going to understand why did he criticize capitalism. Now we will understand what is human nature. We will be able to understand why he says capitalism will not allow humans to be themselves. Means conditions under capitalism, especially for the working class, it will be inhuman conditions. He also speaks about something called as class consciousness. We need to understand what is class consciousness. Okay, there is a link between this class consciousness and revolution. Alright. For Marx, what you understand, in Marx in simple terms, to put, whatever happens in your life, the relations what we have, etc., he says foundation of all this is economics. That is a summary of Marx, simple terms for Marx. Every human relation, every human creation, etc., whatever it may be, the point that it goes down to is that unless you understand the economic structure, you won't be able to understand social structure, political structure. So foundation of everything is what? Economics. So economics is a central part of Marx ideas. Okay, and that is why when we read political economy, means economies, policies brought by the state, how they work. Marxism is also one of the political economy or socialism, what we can say. Here you will be also able to understand why Marx is against private ownership of property. So he will connect everything. Okay, so Marx has been influenced from this industrial revolution, growth of capitalism, what happened in England. So when some saw capitalism led to prosperity, industries, factories, etc., Marx told there is a downside to it also. There is exploitation. There is exploitation of labor class, and that is why you can say Marx inspires to be a god to whom? To the working class people. That his ideas, and for Marx you will also understand about his views on religion. That's all. Now atheist state, Marx has disregarded religion. He told religion does not have any role to play. So what Marx says, it is not man, it is not God who has created man, it is man who has created God. So all of this thing we are going to study about Karl Marx. Then we are going to his criticism. Okay, what are the critique in some of his ideas? Some consider Marx as a god who has failed. Means his prediction never came true. Or some defend him, saying that what? The people who implemented his ideas, they were not serious about implementing his ideas, and that is why they say that his ideas didn't come true. That we are going to look into the next class. So notes is already uploaded for it, but you will be able to understand the notes once we go through the class. And then after doing Marx, we will come to Gramsci. Why? Because Gramsci is connected to Marx. So in this Marx, he gives one thing called as base and superstructure. Gramsci has modified it. Okay, to understand that you will have to know first of all what is base, what is superstructure. That you will only understand when we completely finish Karl Marx. Understood? So this will be the next topic, tomorrow's topic, what we are going to take up.